Number 1. I know it's cliche, the typical creeper on a dating site thing, but this is my story, and it still shakes me to this day. I didn't have much dating experience at the time, and this was back in 2008, when I was going to be a junior in college. I lived in a small town outside of Tacoma, Washington, and attended a university nearby. I was home for the summer as I wasn't taking summer classes that year. I was 20 at the time. I had an account on several dating sites, but wasn't looking for anything serious. One day, in early July, I received a message from Anna Richardson about maybe meeting up as she lived in Tacoma and attended Everest College. She was a year younger, meaning she was going into her sophomore year. I checked out her profile and she had several pictures in addition to her icon. She was interested in art and literature, was majoring in mathematics, listened to EDM and alternate rock, and played soccer. The woman in the photos was very attractive. She seemed pretty legit, and we seemed to have some things in common, so I agreed. We messaged on the site at first. She was thinking we could have dinner at a local Italian restaurant and go for a walk afterwards. I thought this sounded fine and suggested we meet at the restaurant on Saturday at 7 or so. She said she was thinking I could pick her up at her apartment, as she didn't have a car to use at this time because she'd recently gotten into a crash. This was kind of strange to me, and I was wondering why she couldn't ask someone else for a ride, but I stupidly agreed to pick her up and she gave me her address. This proved to be my biggest mistake. We then exchanged phone numbers and spoke on the phone only once, and it was brief, just discussing the details of the date again. I'd pick her up at her place around 6:30 and we'd go to the restaurant at 7. It was a female's voice on the phone and she didn't sound old or anything, so I wasn't worried about anything really. So on Saturday, I got directions to her place and set off. She lived in a pretty nice section of town, in a townhome with 3 stories that was a condo type thing. She informed me that her landlord owned the building and lived on the first floor and rented out the top 2 floors. Anna lived on the 3rd floor. There was a set of stairs on the side of the townhome where there was a door to each floor, but the first floor also had a front door. It was kind of a weird setup. I went up to the side of the stairs on the 3rd floor and knocked on the door. It felt like I waited forever, probably around 5 minutes though, before someone answered. A rather large, middle-aged man with the most bizarre look on his face opened the door. I don't even know how to describe it, other than that there wasn't anything weird about his appearance or outfit. Now my warning bells are going off, but I guess I had the idiotic thought like maybe he's her dad. So I dumbly said, is Anna here? But decided that it was time to get out of here. So I didn't wait for a response and tried to turn around, and he literally grabbed my arm and rasped,
"I'm Anna."
I was smaller, shorter, and much younger than him, so it'd be kinda hard to fend him off. I kept trying to wrench away unsuccessfully, and began screaming for help as he repeatedly tried to pull me through the door, and he finally let me go. I didn't hesitate to take this opportunity to get the heck out of there, and thankfully he didn't try to follow me. I got in my car and went home. I was frustrated that no one had heard and tried to help me, and immensely freaked out. I didn't know if I should head to the police and tell them or what they'd do. That evening, I told my roommate the whole story when I got home. He convinced me to report it to the police and to take pictures of Anna and I's messages if I still had them just in case. I went down to our local police station the next day and informed them of the whole thing and provided them with the pictures. I kinda got the vibe that they weren't taking me seriously, but they said they would go down to this guy's house and question him about it. They had me file a report. Now this is the really crazy part. The police telephoned me the following morning, and they told me to come by because they had some information about the guy. So I did, and they told me that the guy had just seemingly vanished. They spoke to the landlord, and she said that he must have left in the middle of the night because his car was gone that morning. I guess the landlord had a key and opened the door to his apartment, even though they didn't have a search warrant and all his stuff was apparently there. The landlord told them she didn't know much about the guy, but that he seemed normal enough and he didn't leave his apartment very much. She provided them with his name. They did a background check and nothing. The police advised me to delete my account on the website and suggested I change my phone number to be safe, so I did. They told me that at this point, there wasn't much else they could do. I never got any follow-ups or updates on my report, but I'm not sure if that's a good thing. Number 2. This happened when my dad was going to university in the 80s. He had just started going to Nottingham or Leeds University. I can't remember which one. It was in the north of England for those of you who don't know. He and a few friends had decided to rent this small house nearby, but some things came up and he ended up staying there by himself. Turns out that wasn't the greatest decision. The landlord seemed weird, but not overly so. Just your average creepy old man, I guess. So at the time, my dad didn't think much of it. He's actually since forgotten the guy's name, so let's just call him Mr. Chadwick. Before I get on to the next bit, I should probably mention that when he first went on to meet the guy to look around the house, my grandparents went with him just to check the place out. What really gets me though, is how they always describe the basement in the exact same way. Apparently, it was way too clean, like scarily clean, and my grandmother always says how she could never go down there because she got such a bad vibe from it, and my dad and grandfather were the same. And for some reason, there were hooks on the walls that eerily resembled meat hooks. Now my dad has never been a believer of the paranormal, ever, so as he says every time at this part of the story, this is what really made me shit my pants. And really, I can't blame him. It had been about a month into him staying there, I think, and he had just brought out Smokey, his cat. My dad says he can't really remember what he was doing, but he was in the living room, probably watching TV, and Smokey was curled up in the middle of his room, sleeping as cats do. Out of the blue, Smokey jumped up and just started hissing in the direction of the corridor that was on my dad's left from where he had been sitting on the sofa. Apparently, Smokey was always super chill and would never do anything like this, so it put my dad instantly on edge. Looking into the corridor though, he couldn't see anything. This really put my dad on edge. Slowly, Smokey started walking towards the door to the corridor, which was open, stopped, looked up towards the ceiling, and then started hissing again. She wouldn't stop for a while, but my dad eventually managed to calm her down. Anyway, skip ahead about a month and my dad starts noticing things being a bit off. For example, he would come home only to find that the underwear in his underwear drawer had seemingly moved around, or just random objects being in places that he swore he had never moved them to. I don't know why at this point he didn't think something was going on, but he's always been an idiot, so it's kind of expected really. The creepy thing about it was that only he and Mr. Chadwick had a key to get in. Fast forward a few more months, and he decides that the place is way too creepy for him and moves out. By now, he's convinced that it's not him moving things around and really needs to get out of there ASAP. Apparently, Mr. Chadwick was rather hostile when he heard that my dad wanted to move out. Luckily though, nothing happened. He moves in with one of his friends, Andy, for the time being, and just forgets about the whole thing for a while. That is, until he's contacted by the police. They just ask him general things about Mr. Chadwick and what it was like living there and stuff, but they don't actually tell him anything. A short while later, he finds out that they found the corpse of this girl who had rented the house before him in the hallway in the exact same spot Smokey was getting freaked out about. Number 3. I was at my sister's house with my mom watching my son and nephews play in the yard. One of my nephews, Harrison, was picking bark off a tree when I remembered an odd encounter I had as a kid. I said, "So weird," out loud, reminiscing about the encounter. My mom inquired what I was talking about, so I told her. When I was a kid, I was hanging out at the Pinecone Forest, which was what the neighborhood called a small patch of trees on the side of the road. I was picking bark off of one of the trees to pass some time while I waited on my friend Frankie to finish his homework and come out to play. Out of nowhere, it seemed, a guy came up to me. I could smell him before I saw him. He smelled like stale cigarette smoke. I was kind of scared when I looked at him. He wasn't very old, but he had a very lazy eye that was cloudy, and his teeth and fingernails were stained yellow. My mom taught me to be nice to people, even if they don't look like me, so I faked a smile and said hello. "What are you doing?" he asked me. The smell of his breath was the worst. I'm picking the bark off this tree," I replied. "You shouldn't do that. It's like picking off the tree's skin." "How would you feel if someone picked off your skin?" he said, while lightly pinching my arm with his sharp yellow nails. I don't know," I replied, and took my arm back. Just then, Frankie's mom called for me out the door and told me to come and wait inside. I didn't think anything of the whole thing at the time. When I told my mom about it, she had this look of, I don't know, guilt maybe. She said that it's probably time I know the whole story. She thought I forgot about the whole encounter, so she never brought it up to me. First, you should know that the neighborhood I grew up in was a small, tight-knit community. Everyone knew everyone, and there was no reason for an outsider to come unless they knew someone there. Anyway, here's what happened with this guy. Frankie's mom, Sonia, noticed a white van with no windows parked out of the side of the road. I know, how cliche, right? She didn't recognize it, but figured maybe it was a visitor for a neighbor. Sonia said that the van had been there all morning and afternoon. She was kind of keeping an eye on it. She said she just had a bad feeling about it. Her house had a huge window in front facing the pinecone forest, and the van was parked next to it. She saw me waiting for Frankie and kept a constant eye on the van while holding the phone just in case. She saw the man exit the back of the van and walk up to me. As soon as she saw him grab my arm and pinch me, she called the cops. That was when she called me into her house. The cops stopped the guy just outside of my neighborhood. In the back of his van were binoculars, a Polaroid camera, and pictures of me taped all over the walls and ceiling. Me at school, me at my grandparents' house, and at the bank with my mom. Just me everywhere I went. But that's not all. He had a key to a storage unit on him. Inside the unit, they found a cabinet full of knives. A lot of knives. Paring knives, a butcher cleaver, a thin fillet knife, a melon baller, and just various knives of all shapes and sizes. There was also a few anatomy books, obstetrical equipment, duct tape, and 10 empty 5-gallon buckets. In the middle of the unit was an old bed that was used to restrain mental patients, so it had wrist and ankle straps. And the entire inside of the unit was covered in plastic wrap. My mom said that he was in a high-security mental institution for the criminally insane, as of the last she heard. Hey, what is up guys? I hope you really liked the video, and if you did, don't be afraid to give it a thumbs up, and also if you have any sort of suggestions, whether for future video ideas or improvements I can make to the videos, don't be afraid to comment down below. I'm really excited to hear any sort of feedback you guys have, and I hope you enjoyed the videos. And thanks for watching guys.